Saturday, June 10th, social housing advocates, grassroots groups, and community organizations rallied at Dundas and Sherbourne Streets to fight for affordable social housing in downtown East Toronto, and fight back KingSett Capital, and to stop its CEO Jon Love from building a condo tower at 214-230 Sherbourne in the heart of a community that desperately needs social housing. After a decade-long struggle to get the city to expropriate the properties, the city put in a bid to purchase 214-230 Sherbourne last year to build social housing on the land, only to be outbid by KingSett Capital, who paid $53 million for the empty lots. However, community advocates and organizations won't give up the fight. Community leaders, advocates, and residents called Councillor Chris Moyes and the city to begin negotiations with KingSett Capital to buy back 214-230 Sherbourne and build much-needed social housing. There were speakers at the rally and meal was provided. Then they marched on KingSett's office demanding affordable housing now.
But I do have the privilege of being here today. As an immigrant on this traditional land of the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, the Anishinaabe, and Mississauga peoples, I recognize that my livelihood on this land was made possible because of the people who came before me, and in particular because of the stewardship and the care of this land by the many First Nations people who called Turtle Island home before contact. And in a country that we know as Canada today, we talk a lot about truth and reconciliation, but we cannot have reconciliation until we actually acknowledge truth. And the truth is that the way we talk about land as a commodity is rooted in colonialism. The truth is that people who lived on these lands before colonization were living in good relationship with land. The truth is that the education that I received in the Canadian school system did not teach me a full or accurate reality of history. And the truth is that the system today continues to misinform and miseducate. The truth is that the legacy of colonialism has continued through generations to this day. And the truth is that land acknowledgements are futile until there are actionable steps and commitments towards reparation and reconciliation. An example of such futile efforts is the number of city meetings that I've sat at, which begin with land acknowledgements and then proceed to make policies and actions that continue to displace and criminalize an overwhelming amount of Indigenous people. Yes. And so for myself, I commit to learning and listening from teachers in the community, including grassroots organizations like Toronto Indigenous Harm Reduction, and also from individuals like my friend McLeod. The piece of land that we're here to fight for, 230 Sherbourne, this piece of land is being commodified, profited off of, while Indigenous people are overrepresented in the number of people who are unhoused, criminalized, and displaced. This piece of land that we're fighting for is going to be developed into for-profit luxury housing, while just down the street from us, Indigenous people here are living in Allen Gardens, criminalized, while a local councillor is racist towards their sacred fire. I commit to joining the work to fight against corporate greed around this land and to have it be for the larger social good and for the people. And I hope that this is an invitation for you to join me as well. In my own language, Doze.
Thank you, Lorraine. Thank you very much. Once again, thank you so much for being here. I just want to say that many of us recognize many familiar faces. Many of us has been here on this corner, in front of the property, at City Hall, at Metro Hall, doing huge amount of advocacy work for over a decade to demand the expropriation of that property across the street for social housing. And in the midst of what is now a complete and utter housing crisis and disaster, we see that even City Council finally had to declare a state of emergency on homelessness. Expropriating this property would have been a huge and significant step in showing the commitment to building social housing, especially in this community where there is such deep need for supportive and ongoing social housing. But instead, the city only put forward an 11th hour bid to purchase, and we all know that the outcome of that has been that this has fallen into the hands of KingSett Capital, a billionaire real estate corporation that if you look on their website, they talk about how they're so proud that they work with so many high net worth clients. So we know that if they continue to go forward and get their hands on this and we can't get this expropriated, this will lead to greater gentrification, displacement, and many more deaths in our community. So we know that we have to continue this fight, and so I want to bring up our first speakers, Annie and Shelley from the Friends of Chinatown, Toronto.
Hi everybody, we are Friends of Chinatown, also known as FOCT for short. We are a grassroots group fighting for community-controlled, affordable housing and economic and racial justice in Toronto's downtown Chinatown. Our advocacy centers the needs and voices of the working class, seniors, and immigrant communities who rely on Chinatown for cultural and economic resources. So in 2019, FOCT formed out of the urgent need to bring our community together and to fight against a planned development that has already stripped a block in the heart of our neighborhood. This proposed development at 315 Spadina, despite the housing crisis in Toronto, no affordable units were considered for this building. Similar to what's happening at 230 Sherbourne, the city and developers willfully ignored that this development was taking place in a racialized, low-income neighborhood in desperate need of affordable housing. We demanded that this building commit to 100% affordable housing. The response from the developers, Regent International and Podium Developments, was, we can't afford to make these units affordable. The Regent family is worth $2.33 billion. Apparently, they can't make the building affordable because they're more interested in profiting in for-profit housing. With the support and rally of the neighborhood, we were able to fight for a measly 10% affordable units. That's only 19 out of 216 units proposed. The city wanted to call this a victory, but we know that this is not enough. 10% is nothing to celebrate, and we know that their limited imagination will not define the scope of our dream for our neighborhood. Like 230 Sherbourne, our neighborhood is being targeted by KingSett Capital. About a year ago, we spoke to a small business owner who was kicked out of their unit due to renovation and rent increase shortly after KingSett purchased the building. The building currently sits empty, and based on our independent research, we have reason to believe that KingSett is looking to create more land assemblies, purchasing blocks of adjacent units to create larger property sites. There is a looming fear in our neighborhood that developers will continue to demolish, develop, and displace residents in our neighborhood. Today we stand together with 230 Fightback and the community members of Dundas and Sherbourne in resisting for-profit luxury development. Shame on the city for their apathy and inaction in this housing crisis. Nothing for us without us. Expropriate housing or expropriate land for social housing now.
Woo! Thank you, Annie and Shelley, and thank you for that reminder that this is happening all over the city. This is a citywide, this is a nationwide thing that's happening in terms of the continued monetization of properties and land. Our next speaker is rallied Ali, who's an organizer here in Regent Park.
Thank you so much. What do we want? Housing. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Housing. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Housing. When do we want it? Now. Thank you, my friends. Thank you, comrades. My name is Walid Kogali Ali, and I'm with the Regent Park Neighborhood Association, and I'm here to share some very important information. We're living in an era of greed. Greed. Corporate greed, but greed that is meant to displace many racialized and indigenous of our neighbors, many neighbors. And I just want to start off by talking about affordable housing and what affordable housing means to all of us. Because the greedy developers and policymakers that are basically making it almost impossible for good people, hardworking people who are in need of mental health supports, people who are impacted by poverty. They're making it almost impossible for them to live with dignity. We all believe housing is a basic human right. We all believe that. They don't. They don't believe that. And I'll tell you why. The definition of affordable housing that the city of Toronto passed, because so many of you worked so hard to make this possible, was to define affordable housing no more than 30% of household income. That was called OPA 558. That was the bylaw that was passed. A couple of greedy developers last year in November went to the Ontario Land Tribunal to challenge the definition of affordable housing. And they wanted to challenge it from an income-based model to a market-based definition. So think about this. A one-bedroom is going for $3,000 to rent. To rent. It's worth $3,000. Imagine if developers had their way and for affordable housing to be now defined as 80% of $3,000. Who can afford 80% of $3,000 in the city for one bedroom? Nobody. This is intentional. This is meant to gentrify. This is meant to displace Black, Indigenous people from the downtown core. So, what do we do as a community?
Fight back!
We fought back, that's for sure. We pushed back against that definition of affordable housing by coming together and participating in the Ontario Land Tribunal, by showcasing their greed, by calling out these irresponsible developers that just want to make money. Now here's some research. While this definition of affordable housing based on income was getting debated at Ontario Land Tribunal, a bunch of greedy developers put some applications in. So let me give you some stats. So, 180 days prior to the appeal, 89 properties and 20 active development projects put in applications. 16 out of the 20 applications were either an OPA rezoning application, leaving 4 out of 20 as site plan approvals. BJL Properties Incorporated came up 3 times as the developer and landowner. The real estate brokerage with a development arm. 12 out of the 20 applications can be considered large-scale developments. So we're talking over 100 units with various heights from 10, 20, 28, 29, 31, 44, 49, 54, 57 floors and 60 stories. Guess this, just take this in. Only 1 out of the 20 active development projects mentions affordable housing units. So this is all available on the city's AIC website. So in total, with the 20 developments, 180 days before that appeal, there were 4,316 total units, with 32 being outlined as affordable housing units. 32 units out of 4,316 units. That is greed. That is absolute greed. And what we did is we made it clear to the public that this is unacceptable in the city during a housing crisis. And guess what happened? They withdrew their appeal. They withdrew their appeal in February of this year. All those greedy developers said, you know what? We cannot take this public embarrassment anymore. We're going to withdraw it. And now OPA 558 is in full force and effect in the city of Toronto. Okay? So that's the good news. But this is not the end of the news, my friends. Regent Park right now, my neighborhood, my community is going through a rezoning application. And I'm not sure if you know what a rezoning application does, but it allows the developer partner to build more density. So at the community consultation session, I'm with the Regent Park Neighborhood Association, we posed a simple question, a very simple question. What will be the definition of affordable housing that you're going to use in phases 4 and 5. What is the definition? Guess what the response was? Well, we don't know if it's going to be based on income. We don't know if it's going to be OPA 558. But you know what? We're thinking it might be 80%. 80% of market. Which Regent Park resident is going to call that affordable housing? This is what they want to build. This is what they want to pass at City Council. And this is coming up on June 22nd at the East and York Region Community Council meeting. We need to stand in solidarity with each other. We can't allow for greedy developers to get their way at City Hall. We cannot allow for definition, for policies to be written that gentrify, racialize Indigenous communities from the downtown core. We cannot let that stand. Okay, so I need your help. I need you to remind Councillor Moyes that it's his responsibility to stand with the residents of Regent Park and residents across the city of Toronto and reject that application to rezone without the proper definition of affordable housing, okay? That's just one issue. We wanted a central community space. You know, we're sick and tired of our youth and our seniors and many folks that need support for being told, you know what, it's 5 o'clock, you gotta go home, okay? We need a central space to do the organizing and the work and the services that we need, and that's another issue at the table. I would love for you to talk to me after this or connect with me and I can tell you more about this. But let me tell you something. I came here intentionally because I am sick and tired of developers running the show at City Hall, making those sizable donations to all those mayoral candidates, by the way. Okay, follow the money. You will see which developers behind which candidates. And I was actually impressed by one mayoral candidate that I'm supporting, which is Josh Matlow. And the reason why I'm supporting Josh Matlow is because he promised something that many governments have failed to do, which is build public housing through the government, introduce rent controls in the city of Toronto. We know Doug Ford took away the rent controls. Let's bring it back in the city through city-controlled properties and rentals. And let's actually address what's going on, which is community wealth disappearing from our community. Let's make sure that the wealth stays in our community, the housing is controlled by the community, so we stop this trend where now one bedroom is going for $3,000, right? We need to stop this trend. So lastly, I'm going to say this. I want you to challenge every mayoral candidate. I want you to show up at City Council. I want you to show up at the Community Council, even if it's online, and speak up. Because if they feel that no one is watching, they're going to push forward this agenda because they'll think there'll be no consequences. And we need to remind them that there will be consequences. And it's not just elections. It's every day until elections. We will be making noise. We cannot be pushed out of our communities. Solidarity to all of you. What do we want?
Housing!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Housing!
When do we want it?
Perfect timing. All right, our next speaker is Bob Rose. He's a former program coordinator and senior staff at Parkdale Activity and Recreation Center.
Here's the situation right now. You know that 6% of all housing stock in Canada is social housing. That's it. 6%. That's how much social housing we have in this country. And also that these multinationals are really monopolies. They share, they trade names, they buy each other out. So it's hard to figure out who owns what in these hedge fund supported equity-based investments. It's not just a big city phenomenon. Guess what? Starlight has a partnership with KingSett, and they own 85% of the rental housing in Nunavut. And in Yellowknife, 75% of their rental housing is owned by an investment corporation. So what we got to do is we got to take this issue as a housing right, that we have a right to housing, and take it onto the streets, pass the paperwork. This country, this province, and this city must ensure an adequate supply of social housing with social supports as necessary, that is genuinely affordable for those at the lowest end of the economic spectrum, including those who are homeless and those with no income. And we have to create diversity. We've got to take it away from the private sector and build housing that responds to the needs of communities and give communities the power to control the development in them. We need to terminate the large-scale monopoly ownership of housing. We need to expropriate housing that is owned by financial firms violating human rights. We need to prevent the lending of dollars to financial landlords engaged in predatory practices. We need to stop subsidizing financial landlords with a national housing strategy, because that's what's happening. They're running their money in that national strategy, they're taking it, and they're running it through the CMHA to get a good deal on their dollars. That is a crime. So the last thing I want to say is, just thank you all for being here. And I'm a Nova Scotian boy, so I can look around at this crowd and I can see that every one of you has salt in the blood, because that's the terminology we would use down east. Salt in the blood, the fishermen say, you know, you got courage, you got love, you got commitment, you got endurance, you got salt in the blood. So thanks all for being here, and let's walk.
Thank you so much, boss. Our next speaker is Lynn Walker. Lynn, do you want me to bring the mic to you over there? Yeah? I'll bring it over. So Lynn is an Allen Gardens Encampment resident. Here she is.
I got listen to Lynn.
Hello, my name's Lynn. My name's Lynn, and I've been living in Allen Gardens. It'll be 21 months on the 15th of this month. I've lived through 2 winters there. In the time I've been there, there's been from a few tents to 1 tent to we now have over 80 tents. And it's going to rise and rise and rise. And all the people in Allen Gardens, they're my family and my community. And I care about everybody. The reason people are there is because of the evictions, rent evictions, people saying, oh, my son's gonna move in, family. But it's all about raising money. It's about raising the cost of living. And it's really hard on people to just try and survive. Like I've survived through everything. Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, we have to survive. Sometimes there's no food. Sometimes there's too much food, too much stuff. And I find the world is a material world now. It's like just buy, and waste. Things, yes, the government does, they put us against each other. While I've been in Allen Gardens, I've seen so much waste as far as money goes. Like, they've had 4 security guards on me 24 hours a day when I'm the only person in the park. Now, I don't understand why. That's money that could be used for housing. Now they have 4 security guards there walking around doing nothing all day long or sitting in their car sleeping. That's not right. That money could be used for housing. All the wasted money I see. I've seen Jarvis Street has been ripped up 3 times. I've seen that. Why not do it once and do it right the first time? Like, it doesn't make sense. Why are you wasting money when people's lives, they're out there and people's lives, they're losing their lives because of what's going on in our city, in our country. It's not just the city, it's the country. I see ambulances, fire trucks, police cars every day, sometimes for the same person. They go to the hospital, they sit there for hours. I've been at a hospital for 10 hours, and not one person in that hospital touched me. By the time, after 10 hours, we kind of took a wheelchair and came back to Allen Gardens because I had no shoes, and it was raining out. It's actually been returned. But it's, I don't understand, like people, when you get housing, your lives become better. I've seen better people go through drug phases, and I've seen them grow to be better, like let go of the drugs and let go of the alcohol. I can't think because I'm not in Allen Gardens. But
What's the last thing you want to say? Last thing you want to say. Say it.
we need to march, and we need to stand up for each other and fight, because all these buildings are taking away our land and our homes. And where are we going to be? Where are we supposed to go? Like, the city comes every day to take tents. They say, we're only taking tents that nobody's occupied, but that person could go get a coffee and come back and their tent's gone. That's their home. That's their personal, their taxes. They get their taxes done. They get their ID done. And then they steal their homes with everything in it. It's very shameful. Or they'll say, we're going to store your stuff. And what you get back is 2 sleeping bags, and anything important to you is gone. Yeah, very much shameful. It's so shameful what they're doing in our country. It's. Thank you very much, and let's march. Let's march.
Thank you. Oh, no, that was great. Thank you so much, Lynn. And thank you for reminding us just about the ongoing violent displacement of people in encampments. You know, the militarized response that we saw last summer or a couple of summers ago, so I'm losing track of the time, but thank you for your words, Lynn. So the next speaker, I'm going to bring Lorraine Lamb back up here from the Shelter, Housing and Justice Network.
So my name is Lorraine, and I'm here as an outreach worker. And honestly, my job shouldn't exist. I shouldn't need to be an outreach worker, because people should have housing, and people should have food, people should have access to water and bathrooms, but we don't. And I've been an outreach worker for 15 years, and I remember when I first started, people were talking about 230 Sherbourne, and 15 years later, we're still here, and it's the same fight. I'm also here as a friend who's lost so many people in the streets because of preventable things. I know someone who applied for housing in 2010, and they brought me their original Housing Connections response. It was like the original thing, so it's like a little crusty, it's basically fossilized, from 2010. And they hadn't heard anything, and finally, recently I reached out, and I found out that actually he got an offer in 2016, but because they couldn't locate him, they just canceled his application. And so now we're gonna have to start all over again. And so someone might say, well, maybe he should have just followed up, but here's the thing. He was living pretty transiently, and how is someone supposed to just follow up every week to say they're still interested in housing? I mean, he was homeless, so obviously he was interested. I know not one, but I know 2 people who have cancer diagnoses who are living outside. And instead of having a roof over their head to process the tough news and to recover from chemotherapy and radiation, they live in tents. And meanwhile, this land that we're talking and we're fighting about, what is it going to be used for? I know someone who has been homeless for decades, most recently displaced from Novotel and the Strathcona when the programs closed. So he sleeps at McDonald's and stairwells and rides transit. And you know, when he had a place to sleep, he walked upright. And now he's hunched back because he has nowhere to sleep. Meanwhile, the city is closing 2 more shelter hotels this August, and hundreds more people will be displaced. And meanwhile, this land behind us, what's happening with it? This week, Victoria Gibson just wrote in the Star about how the city's own data and its own counts are showing that encampments and the number of people who are homeless is going up. People have no housing that's affordable, not affordable by city definition, but actually geared to income affordable. And circumstances are bleak. And meanwhile, this land behind us is going to be condos. Shelters are full. The city is closing more shelter hotels. People live in ravines and in parks. They find refuge in coffee shops and transit and stairwells and libraries. But wherever they go, they're not welcomed, and they're asked to move along. Meanwhile, this land behind us, what is it being used for? We know that this condo will displace vulnerable and poor people once again. And it will be people who are racialized, people who are poor, people who are Indigenous. Ironic, because the city is going to start turning on their messaging around how we celebrate Indigenous lives because it's June. But meanwhile, what are they actually doing to back that up? And so where are people supposed to go? Because we hear conversations around safety, but whose safety do we really refer to? Because in my opinion, it's not safe for people to have to live outside. It's not safe for people to have to pee in public because we don't even have the decency to offer public bathrooms. It's not safe for people to be violently displaced from shelter hotels that provided stability and now they have nothing. It's not safe for people to be unhoused in the face of systemic violence and structures. It's not safe for 230 Sherbourne to become a luxury condo. So whose safety do we really care about here? And so what we really, really desperately need is geared to income housing. And meanwhile, this piece of land is going to be for-profit luxury condos? No. And across the city, we hear about pilot projects and, quote, revitalization plans, which we know is code for social cleansing of poor people. Because you see, revitalizing is about restoring something to life. And the fact is, this neighborhood already had life. This neighborhood took care of each other. This neighborhood helped keep each other safe. This community worked to survive in the space and faces of oppressive institutions and systems. This community does not need revitalization. Revitalizing is about gentrification. It's about putting unaffordable condos in areas that are primarily home to racialized and poor people. For the last 10 years, I worked at Yonge and Bloor, and when condos went up around it, poor people were displaced and rooming houses torn down. Those residents had nowhere to go, and my friend David died on the streets. When condos went up on George Street, they said that Seton House needed to be, quote, revitalized. A lot of those residents are still displaced to nowhere land in Scarborough. When condos went up in Regent Park, those, quote, mixed income units were not affordable to Regent Park residents. Those people are displaced. When condos go up and gentrification happens, poor and racialized people are increasingly criminalized and surveilled. They are targeted. They're not welcome in grocery stores like the Freshco at Parliament and Dundas because they seem unwell. So what do we think will happen when a condo goes up here? Whose safety is the most threatened? We need geared to income housing, and we need it now. We needed it yesterday. We needed it 10 years ago and 20 years ago. We don't need more condos, and we definitely don't need that here. There's a local counselor who talks about homeless people being service resistant. And in my experience, that is absolutely the biggest lie ever, because people want services, and they reach out for supports. I met with someone today who's working a cash job every day, trying to find a place, but he can't find someone who's willing to rent to him for the amount that he's able to. And he's also a young black man, so we know that there's a lot of subconscious bias that's happening there. Each person I work with is receptive to services and supports, and everyone tells me, I just want housing. Here's the thing, there is none. And I know that KingSett, I know that they don't want to be targeted. Maybe they think they're just doing, quote, legal business, and that's what they're allowed to do. But here's the thing, they are complicit, and absolutely complicit in the harm and displacement and violence towards poor people and unhoused people. And if they continue with this development, they will be complicit in the deaths and displacement and this isolation that this community will continue to experience. This land could have been so much more than a luxury condo that we do not need. Let's march on.
Thank you, Lorraine. So here he is, Gaetan Aru. I don't think you need an introduction.
Okay, folks, it's going to be very short. We're going to march. Thank you for sitting on concrete in the hot weather, listening to everybody. All I want to start by saying is, although this is a local fight, it has national implications. This is a fight that is going around this housing crisis in every poor community across the country. So for us, you know, when KingSett paid $53 million for that property, we said, like, fuck, they're not going to build anything there. We're going to stop them. This is part of that movement. We're going to mobilize in Toronto, and we're going to get together and fight this. So let's get ready to march. We're basically going to march over to York. Thank you so much for coming. Let's go.
Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also follow us on social media, and for more information, check out our website.